I was being given a chance to be able to show who I was. And so I showed up every day. I remember one time we had a car hit a actual building, jumped over a speed bump, crashed into the side of a building. I remember I showed up on that property, made sure we got it all boarded up and got it taken care of that night. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning when that happened. When you're doing your move-ins, you got to remember, I'm from the old school where, would you move your mom into this apartment? Would you move your grandma into this apartment? You can't get a first impression again. It almost makes or breaks a whole lease term for that person and how they feel when they first came into that apartment, how they feel they were treated, and how they feel that their apartment looked and felt to them. If you're giving people the tools to succeed at the beginning, and you're really challenging them to look deep in themselves to pull out their strengths,
Welcome, brother. It's good to have you.
man, I'm excited to be here, Adrian.
You've been around for a long time. 25 plus years. How many years?
So I started in 2001. So it's been 24 years, actually.
24 years. You have a couple of years on me.
I wouldn't have guessed that, not even one bit.
Yeah.
I actually love listening to what you have to say. A lot of times I think that what you're talking about is right on line with what I'm passionate about. I really enjoy most of the conversations, and I try to interject because I believe that people just really need to know the truth a lot of times about what's really going on and what we're really doing and how great this industry can really be if you make it that way. It's really a mindset thing and how you want to take every day. I was kind of like everybody else. I was a construction guy who went into maintenance. I kind of did it out of security from my family at that time. I ended up loving this industry and everything about it. I think that every single piece I've worked in has built me to be a better character of a person as well as a worker throughout the years I've been here.
I love the fact that you're bringing history and how amazing is it, but also you brought up the fact that it's what you make it, like everything in life. Not what somebody else kind of like thinks about it for you or like designs for you. It's really about what you make it. What are you gonna make out of the situation? So back to when you started in multifamily, tell me the story of how did that happen? How did you end up in multifamily? What's the specific story?
Okay, so I was a painter for apartment complexes, and I was just doing painting. I was actually a painter for houses, and I kind of moved into that field. They started doing some commercial. It was a little company called Smith Painting here in Dallas Fort Worth. It was in 1998 through 2000. I got approached by a maintenance guy, and he said, "Hey, man, you have the kind of personality and the character. You might want to jump into maintenance itself." He said, "The only thing you're lacking is your AC training at that time." Because I was a painter, I had done drywall, I had done little, all the little intricacies that we normally do on an everyday basis. And I had great rapport with the people that I worked with. I had a great personality. I was able to connect with them very easily and very well. Had great communication with the office staff. And so I think that he wanted to just kind of bring me into it and really show me what it was. And so I took my first step when I jumped on with Sexton Companies in Indiana. And that was in 2001. They were building and managing their own apartment complexes. And I got a chance to really see from the development side up. But I started out as just a regular technician where I just kind of did a little bit of whatever they wanted me to do. I had a really good supervisor there who really involved me in as much as he possibly could and gave me a chance to really grow with him. And so I stayed there for about 4 years.
That was the beginning. How long did it take you to become a service manager for the first time?
It took me 2 years from that first start. So in 2003, I started my first service manager position.
What were the things that you learn as being first time supervisor that you realize like you thought about the job and then you learned that they weren't so?
As a supervisor, it's more about the people you work with and not about the title that you get. So when you're a first time supervisor, you think, oh my God, I've got to handle all of this stuff myself. And in reality, you've got to be able to delegate that stuff and grow the people underneath you to be able to handle a lot of those tasks along with you.
How did you get promoted? Like, how did that actually happen? So tell me the
It was
story.
my hard work and ethic. I was a super hard worker. I was my willingness to jump into anything that they asked me to do. And my communication with the office, being able to talk with them every day and be able to demonstrate a willingness to want to work with all the different personalities that were within that.
Any formal training you were given before
I was a
moving?
painter. I painted houses before I got into it. Now, since then, of course, I went back to school. I've been at Lindsay. I went to Lindsay Cooper in 2004. So right after I became a service manager, I went to Lindsay Cooper, did my schooling there as an HVAC tech. So I got that HVAC tech training. And then at Sexton, they had this great organization where they allowed you to learn appliances, microwaves, refrigerators, washer and dryers. We were able to break them down in a warehouse with a trainer with us. So we actually got to see real time right there exactly how to break those down.
What I'm trying to get is, when you were first promoted as a service manager, were you told that now that you're being promoted, this is the formal training that we do for service managers? Was
No,
there any?
no, there was nothing when I first started.
What was it like? Like, tell me how it happened. Like,
Okay,
hey,
so I was just a hard worker. They had a position open up because the guy didn't want to take on that responsibility. Of course, a lot of it was because you've got responsibility without any kind of like guidelines of what you need to do and where you need to be. We were still doing it on 3-piece paper back then, where you'd have to rip one off, give one to your manager, one to your team leader, and then you would have one for files, basically. So they would send one to corporate. Your manager would keep one in her office, and you would have one for files in your office in case you had to go back and look at it. There was no computers at that time. The offices didn't even have a computer installed in them in the maintenance department yet, which is unbelievable. Now that you look back and see how much technology we could have used back then to be able to move what we do now, it's amazing. And I've loved learning that as well as I've been going forward.
how many apartments they had at that community? Where you
That community had 268. My first community.
so that's probably still like 10-20 million dollar property right there. They just came to you and said, "Hey, Danny, here's the keys, man. Congratulations, good luck with the new job."
It was kind of like that. Yeah, it was like, hey, I just want you to be present every day, and I took it like it was a responsibility, like it was something that I was being given a chance to be able to show who I was, and so I showed up every day. I remember one time we had a car hit a actual building, jumped over a speed bump, crashed into the side of a building, and my supervisor at that property, because we were all really super close, we had three apartment complexes right there. He wouldn't show up because he was an older guy and he was tired, didn't want to. I remember I showed up on that property, made sure we got it all boarded up and got it taken care of that night. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning when it happened.
What is the funniest story that you remember from being a technician from the time that you were a technician?
I have a couple, but one that really sticks out in my mind is one time I got a call from a lady. She's like, I need maintenance help. I can't get this figured out. And I said, what's going on, ma'am? Luckily I was the one who answered. And she's like, my catfish jumped out of my tank. I need someone to come help me. And I'm like, your catfish? Okay, I'll come over there. I walked over there, grabbed her catfish off the ground, put it back inside the tank, and looked at her and said, we're good to go, right? Everything good? And I just told her, you probably need to put a little cover on top so your fish can't get out of your tank.
Houston, we have a 20-pound catfish emergency.
It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I was just laughing the whole time when I went over there. I could not believe that happened to her, but it was very interesting. I've also had a snake on a front porch before. They couldn't get in their front door. Had to go over and remove the snake from the front door area.
Tell me about a big failure that you encountered, like something that where you really, really screwed up while being a technician, and what was the lesson that taught you?
We had lift stations when I first started. I don't know if you know what lift stations are. That they pull the water and they feed it through the complex, and they have a tank down below. Well, I didn't understand that those floats had to be cleaned annually. Well, I had one stick one time, and it started backing water up onto my property down the street. It was like you can almost row a canoe down this street. So what I learned is one of the biggest things I learned is you have to make sure that you're taking care of each part of it, and you have to understand what those are. So in this situation, we started a cleaning protocol where we did it every 4 months. We cleaned those floats and we made sure those floats were going to not be sticking no more. And so it was the scariest thing watching water go down your street. None of them went to the apartments, but it went down the street and was just all over the streets. People had to drive through this water.
For service managers, or for some that already are getting ready to become a service manager, looking back, things that you've learned, what are the most valuable pieces of advice that you could share with someone that desires or it thinks that they're ready to become a service manager? What are some things, what are some pieces of advice for them? What should they be preparing for?
Communication is probably your biggest asset when you're a service manager, making sure that you're communicating with all your guys. The other thing is just understanding that you're not alone, that each guy in your team is going to be there with you. My biggest thing I tell everybody is learn how to understand each and every aspect of your job. You're not going to have to do every aspect of it, but learn it. And now that we have computers, we're able to do a lot more with that. We're able to really understand where the problems are in our communities. Now that we have these new technologies like Salesforce or Power BI that allow you to actually navigate through your complex and see where your problems are. But again, I think the biggest thing that people really need to understand is that communication is probably your biggest factor of all things that you're going to work on, that you're going to use throughout your career, not just in the service manager, but in any position you go forward from there. Communicating the skills that you do have and the things that you need help with, so that they can get that information to you and those training to you, to make sure that you're successful in every role that you're going to take.
You mentioned the technology, abundance of technology that's available to site level maintenance crews nowadays. What are some things that you wish technology would address for you and for your team?
I think that the biggest thing that we have a problem with sometimes is integration of the different programs that come in. So being able to take, let's say your work orders and be able to allow different parts of it to understand what those are. So if I close it out in Yardi, let's say, Yardi should be able to update my BI and let them know. But in like this case scenario, Yardi doesn't talk to BI in that way. And so you have to go into BI and actually close it out there and be able to see it through there. Now we can actually schedule things out where before we couldn't do that so much. So now you can actually take down that time limit of what it's gonna take to get those work orders done. And this is just one scenario. I love Salesforce as well. I think the new one, Salesforce, which has just come out, I think that is an absolute game changer on some of those things, to be able to assign those units out and those problems out to each one of your technicians, especially by strength. If you have a guy who's super awesome on plumbing, your probably best bet is to start assigning some of those jobs to them, and then allow some of your other techs who are not as strong be able to see how they take care of those problems. Same thing with your HVAC. I love HVAC, so I take care of a lot of that stuff myself because I'm super passionate about doing those. But I like to let those guys see how that's done so they understand what that is, and then they can take that knowledge forward and really see those little shortcuts that we can do that are going to save time. Not shortcuts that are going to not do quality, but are going to save time in the process of doing what we're doing.
And now a word from Dean Fungawing, founder and CEO, KAIROS.
I started the company in 2017. We spent 3 years in research and development, talking to multifamily owners, talking to commercial real estate owners, getting feedback on pricing and the technology and how they want it to work, talking to maintenance teams one-on-one. And it wasn't until 2021 that we actually launched product. And from our very first customer to now over 15,000 multifamily apartments, I think we'll be in over 30,000 units after the end of next quarter. It's growing very fast. And all of our customers, about 100 properties that we're in, not a single customer has experienced water damage post installation of our technology. We've seen a quick ROI, and with thousands of sensors, not having any insurance claims post installation is kind of unheard of in this space, right?
Throughout your career, Danny, you worked through all sorts of asset types. What was the most challenging one for you?
I think it is like the 80% renovation up. Doing those properties that are C class that you have to do big renovation projects on, you're usually keeping 2-3 boards going at one time, trying to keep up with that system. And so you really have to have engaged employees with you to be able to get that taken care of. It's not always on you, but It's on you to get those scheduled correctly and make sure that those are being walked out and being looked at correctly. 100%.
Can you recall a very challenging moment in your career as a service manager, and also funny at the same time? A funny story, something that happened that you'd like to share.
When I first started, I was doing an AC unit one time, and this is so funny. So I had a service manager standing over top of me. Yeah, actually, it was what you guys would call a regional service manager now. But back then, he was, I guess, a senior service manager, and I was a service manager underneath him. And he wanted to see how I did an AC unit, how I vacuumed it down, and how I purged out the system. So we hook up the purge, everything is good. We just put in a new compressor, we start purging it down, and the vacuum pump starts shooting water out the top of the head of the vacuum pump. We're like, what's going on? There's no way it can't be pulling water. End up finding out there was a little leak in the pipe underneath the building that we couldn't see, and it was pulling the water from underneath the building and putting it through there and shooting it out the vacuum pump. It was hilarious. So it took us a few minutes to understand what was going on, and then it took us a few minutes to just go ahead and do a pressure check and find out that's what the problem was.
What was the toughest situation that you had? The one that kind of like pushed your boundaries, that you'll say, man, like I was really, really tested here.
I think again that would have to be where I had that lease up with Graystar when I was working with them, and I think I was doing 30 move-ins a week. We were doing a full lease up on it, and we were doing renovations at the same time. That was a really tough situation where I had to really hone all my skills that I had learned over my time to really put them in action to be able to get those through those. We had a lot of tracking on the computers then, and so I was learning new computer systems at that time too. It was a real tough time, but it was also rewarding because I was able to go through so many different things and really test myself and my boundaries and what I can get done.
You mentioned the movies. I know you're very passionate about the perfect make ready, the make ready as an art. Why is it make ready an art for you?
Well, I just think that when you're doing your move-ins, you got to remember, I'm from the old school where, would you move your mom into this apartment? Would you move your grandma into this apartment? What I do is I believe in 60-day pre-move-in walks. I believe in 30-day pre-move-in walks. So that way you're understanding of where you're at. And I'm telling you, you can't get a first impression again. It almost makes or breaks a whole lease term for that person and how they feel when they first came into that apartment, how they feel they were treated, and how they feel that their apartment looked and felt to them when they moved in. So I always go after those first, and I look for the hardest person in my staff that is the most critical of anything that's going on, and I ask my guys to skill up to them. Because if we're skilling up to them, if we're providing the best move-in experience for that resident and each and individual resident afterwards. And I come back from the old school of 3 to 5 day move-in processes. And you can hit those every time. It's just about scheduling, making sure that you're doing your pre-walks to make sure you know exactly what you have and you have your stuff already advanced, and giving your service team or your contractors a week notice ahead of time when they're going to be starting doing those processes. So that way it's seamless. They're giving you their best guy. You're being able to get those units done quickly, and you're having all the knowledge that you need to make sure those are getting done efficiently.
How do you balance speed and quality, Danny?
Speed and quality is, okay, so you can get two. I always say you can get 2 or 3. You can get speed, quality, and price. I'll give up price to get speed and quality. I think that, if you're moving people in and you're keeping your property at 97% to 100% occupied at all times, that little bit of cost it's costing to get that done is not going to affect your resident. And again, I'm always about resident experience. I want that resident to experience the best experience they can possibly have, because they can go next door. They can go, especially in nowadays times, there's an apartment complex right next door to where you're at. And if they feel that you're not giving them that value that they're looking for, or that community that they're looking for, that feel that they're looking for, they're going to go somewhere and find that exact same thing.
How do you train your team to own the process?
I try to give them responsibilities and let them see how those play out. So let's say we have a guy who just isn't doing a great make ready job. I try to show him how that affects every aspect of that person's moving. So I've had people come through and go, man, this guy's so tough. I said, do you remember the make ready process on that? Do you remember how you left that bathroom floor for him when he moved in? After we had cleaned, we had everything done, you went back in there to go do the caulking on the tub, let's say. You left that not probably like you would probably leave that for your mom. Did you expect him to feel any better about you later on when you go in there to go do a work order for him? And at that point, they start to really take ownership over what that process is for them and each individual one of them.
I know another passion of yours is training and mentoring your technicians. Why is this such a priority to you?
Because I think that if you're giving people the tools to succeed at the beginning and you're really challenging them to look deep in themselves to pull out their strengths, they're going to succeed. And people enjoy succeeding. I'm just going to be honest. It's so much better than losing. I mean, losing, you learn a lot, but when you succeed and you have people that are pushing you and they're telling you, hey, I see in you what the greatness that you can be, it makes a big difference in there. And also, we're losing a lot of skills every day. We're losing a lot of the skilled technicians that are there. And I want to be part of that, helping those guys to learn those things that we got to learn easily in the back in the day because we had more time. We had a lot more time on a lot of these things to get things done. And I want them to be able to have that knowledge. And I know it was easier for me when I had good, solid support in my career. And I want to be that same thing for them.
What was the biggest mistake you've made when you brought in someone new?
Not giving them the resources, expecting them to know things that they didn't know, and not being available for them when they needed that support. I think those are the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my career with a younger tech, and I've learned tremendously from those. And that was really towards the beginning of my career, because as I learned how I wanted to be treated and how I expected my superiors to treat me, I made sure that I started treating every single one of them the same way.
And now a word from Sean Landsberg, co-founder, AppWork.
Most prop tech companies are built this way. We're hiring people that could write code. We're hiring people that are selling the product, but the end user is nowhere in this picture. How's AppWork different than the scenario I just described?
Well, we're fundamentally different because we are the end users ourselves. We, meaning myself, I am an end user of the product. I use the product myself on a daily basis. But something that we're a little bit different than I always like to look at us as, we're almost like a community of people. Us, AppWork, and all of our clients, where we leverage everybody's feedback, collective feedback, to help make AppWork the incredible product that it already is, and to help continue improving it. So we're constantly innovating, and we're all of our innovation, all of our pipeline really comes from the feedback and the ideas that our clients are giving us.
I think it's safe to say that we're breeding a sink or swim culture in multifamily maintenance. What are your thoughts on that, and how can we provide a better experience for the new hires? I want you to go to specifics of, like, not just like general talking, but what are some things that we could do specifically as an industry to change that onboarding experience for the better?
Okay, that's a passion of mine too, because I've been onboarded very poorly before, and so I understand the process, but I've also been onboarded very well. So I think that the best thing you can do is first take time with them, because you got a new guy who's coming in and he's really looking for the support of you. So when he's going through the onboarding, let's not just give him a computer screen and a computer animated video to watch. Let's actually be involved in that process. Let's get hands-on, show him how to navigate that system and what shortcuts there are in that system to make sure that he's being able to. So let's say like he's new to a computer system. Let's show him how to put folders together in email so he can, put folders together. So each one of his vendors has its own folder in his email. Another great one is putting tabs on your screen so you can get to easy access of each one of your systems that you're going through. So let's say if you have HD, you have Salesforce, you have Power BI, you have Yardi. Let's put those in the easy access format for him to make sure that he understands how to get to those easily. And it's not going to be so cumbersome for him to get through those. Those are a couple of great ideas. Another one is shadowing, making sure that we're having them shadow one of your lead guys who is very good at what he's doing. That gives him a chance to really see what what it looks like to excel in that program that you're putting them into.
You dropped a few tech names, names of technology that you're using or you've been using. What's your favorite one and why?
I think Power BI and Salesforce are my two favorite. Salesforce is great for closing out and implementing work orders, being able to assign them and be able to get into those. And then Power BI, which is a new technology that I got into when I was over at Windsor, it was absolutely game changing to be able to see on your property exactly where the problems are going on and what type of problems those are and what is your longest standing problems you're having. So if you're having a lot of problems with appliances or if you're having a lot of problems with HVAC, so you can really dig in and see where your guys are struggling at and get that support to them. I think that was one of the biggest game changers was Power BI. I don't know how many people have used that technology, but I want to say it is phenomenal for being able to dig down into your property and really take care of and give your residents the experience that they deserve.
What was one training moment that you'll never forget in your career?
Appliance training with Sexton. That was, I mean, again, I think that hands-on experience with one-on-one where you got to really dig in and they actually challenged you to do it yourself every time. So it wasn't just watching a video on how to do it or someone telling you how they did it. It was actually watching hands-on and then you having to do it and prove that you can do it yourself. And that, I think, was game-changing for me on all my appliances. It still helps me to today on every single appliance I work on.
You're also passionate about HVAC work. Let's go there a little bit. What do you wish every tech understood about HVAC work?
The airflow is the most important thing to air conditioning. Airflow in and airflow out will make your air conditioner probably the best. And then PM, making sure that you're getting your PMs done. So you're doing your air filter changeouts, your fan cleanouts, making sure those are done correctly. And so that's going to eliminate most of your problems during the summer. Also, the cleaning of the outside coils. With those three things and making sure your airflow is correct, you're going to eliminate 3/4 of all your air conditioning problems.
What are some common mistakes that you see maintenance professionals making while they're troubleshooting, they're working on HVAC systems?
A lot of times they don't understand that continuity isn't going to always get you where you need to be. You really need to dig into ohms. Almost everything you have on your appliances, you can do into ohms. So let's say you have a bad contactor outside. We need to ohm those, not just continuity, because continuity still allows a burned out coil to still be. You have to check those ohms on those kind of situations and making sure that you're looking at the whole system and why it happened and not just what happened and just replacing the one thing. Let's find out why it happened so that way we can eliminate that problem again from later on.
Danny, if you were to pick 3 skills that every technician, service tech should master, what would they be?
Communication. I think that they also should have a really good idea on how to communicate to you and schedule your vendors, and openness to be able to accept the things that you it's mostly soft skills, because the hard skills, a lot of it we can teach, but they have to have the right people in place to be able to teach those things. I think that HVAC is probably your number one as far as hard skills in multifamily. It's the most dominant thing that we take care of on a regular basis, especially in Texas. Maybe not so much in Atlanta, but it's definitely in Texas. It's probably our number one that I say that you need. And then it goes back to communication, just making sure that you're communicating with every single team member that you have with you and that you're letting them know what's going on with it. Your residents are going to be acceptable of a lot of things as long as you're communicating with them exactly what's going on.
I want to move to a few rapid fire questions right now. What's the worst maintenance mistake that you've seen?
I had a guy who put a water heater in backwards. So we couldn't access the panel to be able to change out the element or check the element or drain the water heater down or any of that. And he actually put it in backwards. And I'm like, did you think? He's like, I didn't even think about doing it later. I was just trying to get it. I'm like, that's a mistake.
If he fits the space, it works. He hits up.
Yeah.
It must be right. What's the best compliment a resident ever gave you, Danny?
I had a resident tell me that they were super thankful that I looked through a system. They didn't even know that there was a problem with what was going on, and that they appreciated my time and my communication with them, exactly what was going on, so that this can never happen again.
What makes you keep coming back after 25 years?
The people, the smile on their face when you take care of a work order for them, the people who are thankful that you showed them a trick that they never had no idea that was going on, the tech that was working underneath you that looks at you and says, man, thank you for being here for me. Those are what keep me in the multifamily business and keep me coming back to doing this, what I do right now. It's mostly the customer service part of it, just making sure people are taken care of. I love to see that smile at the end of every job that you take care of. And it's very prevalent in our industry.
Tell me about the top people that made the most positive difference in your life and in your career, Danny, and why. Explain why.
There's a couple. You're one of them, Adrian, actually. Talking to you a few times. There was one time I talked to you and you said, Danny, whenever you look at something, look at it with more than one view. Don't look at it with just one view of how things are. Look at it in multiple operating views and how another person might take it, and how that customer or even the owner of that business is going to look at that same thing. And that was big for me. I think you told me that about 9 years ago, 10 years ago, but when I first met you. It was one of the greatest things you ever told me, and it really opened up my eyes to a different side of what we do.
I want to thank you for this completely unexpected. And I didn't realize that, that conversation from 9-10 years ago made such an impact on you. You're very kind to bring it up. Who was in your life in general, like, a person, an individual that made the most positive impact? It doesn't have to be like work related.
I would have to say that's a hard one, because I've had some really good people and really good people in my life. I want to say my mom probably been most impactful. She's always open-minded. She was a vet nurse my whole life. So she worked really hard, long hours. And one of the things she always instilled in me was to treat the person next to you just like you would treat the person that was at the top of your company. And so it was one of the things I always took to heart. And I always thought that was probably the biggest reward thing I've ever been given, was the ability to be able to see everybody at the same level, and not look at them at a different level.
If your mom was with us in a studio right now, what would you tell her?
I love her. She has always been one of those forces for me that's always been on the good side of everything I do.
Danny, one of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking about lately, it's legacy. When it's all said and done for you, looking back, what would you like for people to remember? What would you like your legacy to be?
I think it's that I was a hard worker, and that I was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that people grew and people are better off for having worked with me. I really taken a lot of time with a lot of people to try to help them understand things and even in life, that weren't always the same for everyone. I believe that I've always been an underdog person. I always wanted to help the person who no one else wanted to talk to, no one else wanted to be around. I thought that they had value. So I think if anything I wanted to be remembered for, is that I took time with those people that no one else wanted to take time. They were just as important to me as anyone else that I had on my team.
What are some final thoughts? What are some things that you wish you had the opportunity to say and you haven't?
I think that I wish I could tell every single person that I worked with that they helped me in some way, and that I loved the fact that I got to work with them and be around them, because each person that I worked with had changed me in some way or made me better in another way. And I think that if I had a chance, and I do a lot more now as I'm getting older, I tell them how much I love them and how much I appreciate them. And I wish I did that more when I was younger, because you just don't understand that as much, that part of it. I mean, you tell them, but it's not the same. It's when you get a little bit older and you start to realize how impactful every single person in your life really is.
Danny, super amazing to have you here, brother. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for making time for me, for the audience. Hope to continue the conversation down the road. I love your passion and everything that you're standing for in this industry. You're a true inspiration for many.
I appreciate you, Adrian. And like I said, you and there's another one too, Tony. Tony was another one that really hit home with me. A lot of the things that he brought out in me over the last 6 or 7 years as well has been extraordinarily positive. I think that everything that he does brings the best out of somebody else, and that's really where I started really driving a lot of that innovation and bringing a lot of that growth from me into other people as well.
Keep being who you are, Danny. And again, it's been amazing having you here today, brother.
Thank you, Adrian. I really appreciate it. It's been a blessing and a pleasure.
Everyone, thank you so much for watching Masters of Maintenance and our episode. I'm your host, Adrian Danila, signing off. Until next time, take care.